Everybody, and welcome to our panel on AV in the post-COVID-19 world. We've got a great selection of panelists here, and it should be a great discussion. First off, we have Ronnie Seebach, who's the co-founder and VP of Technology at One Beyond. She began her career as a software developer at Apple and was a management consultant with BCG. She holds a BA, an MS in computer science, and an MBA, all from Harvard. During her 22 years with One Beyond, Ronnie has been responsible for customer support, new product development, and technology partnerships. She has led the development efforts for the newest product line of automated camera tracking solutions and is excited to see them being adopted now by so many universities, corporations, and government agencies. Since her days at Apple, her goal has been to provide easy-to-use technology products to enhance productivity, communication, and education. Then we have Alex Paris, who is the product manager of digital media at Crestron, where he leads product strategy and direction for video solutions, including DMNVX, Crestron's market-leading AV over IP solution, which transforms the way video is distributed. Alex has successfully managed solutions and partnerships to position Crestron's digital media portfolio to provide customers with a continuous return on their investments as technology evolves. Alex has been with Crestron for 8 years, holding a variety of responsibilities. Alex has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Fairfield University. David Missel is a 30-year veteran of the professional audio industry and currently Technical Application Engineering Manager on his 15th year with Sennheiser. David consults prominent news and sports broadcasters, theaters, live music stages, integrators, and consultants, corporations and universities on multi-channel wireless installations, meeting space and classroom technology, and assistive listening solutions. And lastly, we have Michael Lisi of WolfVision, who is a quote-unquote entertaining enigma. Think visionary market strategist meets content creating showman / communicator. Now mixed in results-oriented sales and marketing professional who specializes in Pro AV and unified collaboration solutions. Freshly caffeinated with a microphone. He has helped successfully develop and execute the sales, marketing, and channel strategies for a number of organizations and currently manages the distribution sales channel for WolfVision USA. He is a former host of the Technology Showcase Tour, where he spent years engaging and consulting with thousands of business owners, technology managers, consultants, system designers, and resellers in a fully immersive, experiential roadshow environment. Most recently, he helped produce and host the inaugural Virtual Collaboration Experience Conference. And I'm Matt Prusnick, editor of AV Technology Magazine. So, to get started, a lot is changing now with COVID-19. It's brought about a ton of changes with Pro AV. But when I think about the post-COVID collaboration landscape, it's kind of a dramatic hastening of trends that were already underway. So I think of businesses and schools incorporating remote employees and students. So how has the Pro AV industry been prepared for this? And what are some ways that maybe it wasn't as prepared as it could have been?
For one, all of us, or?
Okay, you can start, David.
Okay, I think it's really hastened the change. I think obviously, and back in March when everything happened, I think we've already saw a trend toward to more touchless audio and designs of rooms of classrooms changing to more remote teaching. I think that was a trend happening, but obviously this has really sped up that process and sped up the technology. And I think we've seen, all of us have seen customers that were going down one path with more traditional, from my side, coming from Sennheiser, more traditional wireless microphones and maybe podium microphones and tabletop microphones to a full stop. And okay, this is not going to work. We have to think about COVID more. We have to think about the hygiene of it. We have to think about being more remote than even what we thought of before. How is this going to work with AV and IT all together? So I think a lot of our customers, some were already going down that path, but now it seems that all of our customers have no choice but to go down this path to more touchless audio, more IT integrated, hybrid type systems. So March was a full stop and then really dead for a while, slow. And then now everybody, okay, this is going to be a while. We really got to make these changes. We got to move forward. And I think we're seeing that business increasing as schools are trying to ramp up and so forth. So for Sennheiser's perspective, it's really pushed us towards that touchless audio, thinking about mic arrays and thinking about people bringing in their own devices, right? Another big change that we've seen is now people wanting to rely on their own devices a lot more in this post-COVID, or I can't even say post-COVID, during this COVID process right now.
Yeah, I might be able to give a couple of examples of that. So we have, you know, customers, corporate customers, as well as university customers, who were already doing a certain amount of hybrid. Independent Health, for example, is an insurance provider who didn't have enough office space or parking spaces for all their employees. So they started working with some employees remote, about 30% of their employees, and actually found that productivity, they were making about as many calls a day as they had when they were in the office. Babson is an example of a university. They're a business school that caters to executives. So executives often are traveling or have jobs and want to join remotely. So these are examples where there were customers already starting to use, you know, much more video conferencing to extend the classroom, extend the office for remote workers. I think one of the big changes is with people having to remain, you know, be distant and not as many people, you know, in the office, is that maybe those smaller huddle spaces aren't so important anymore. But when you do go in the office, you want to be in a meeting space, but you need to be separate from one another. So some of the rooms that may not have been set up, you know, the larger spaces may not have been set up with adequate number of cameras or microphones. Audience members need to have mics as well as presenters, for example, where that may not have been the case before. If you were just doing lecture capture, you only needed the presenter. So, I mean, I'll let Alex or Michael chip in as well.
I think that both of you are right on. I mean, the industry has been trending towards simplicity, simplicity for setup, simplicity of use. And before COVID started, really the touchless aspect was coming into play because a lot of devices were being deployed with automatic features, out of the box functionality to really simplify the designs. And now we're just seeing a rapid demand for it with touchless, hybrid, wireless and wired in the same room. And then also the bridging of the bring your own device so that these cloud solutions like Zoom, Teams, Microsoft can all work together. And really we're seeing that explode not only from the touchless aspects, but also from the hybrid working environment. Because I think when Ronnie, you said it, no one really expected this to, or David, you said it, no one expected this to last in the beginning. Right? Everyone was questioning how long it was actually going to take. Yeah. And now that we're realizing that this really is the future for a short period of time, you're preparing for it. And I think that will always change your perception for the rest of this generation and future generations that are growing up in it. But there are things that will come out of it that really advance the technology of our industry.
Okay, so I think that leaves me to contribute too. And I agree with you all in the sense that we've been focusing on sort of touch-free, and that was kind of beginning to version with the bring your own meeting type concepts, and you're bringing your own personal device into a meeting room. And then once we decided we didn't want to touch anything, touch-free became all that much more valuable. But the question about was our industry preparing and is our industry prepared? I'm gonna say I'm very concerned. And I would ask the question, you know, if you look at how many projects, both in corporate sector or in education, they're becoming computer-centric, PC-centric. And what is that value? So what part of that is the AV integrator's role? It's USB signal extenders, it's low-cost USB peripherals. And so though we've been able to accommodate that request, I mean, I've talked to various consultants that are saying 90% of the projects they're specifying, it's basically USB extension running through conduits. And the customer's moving toward a PC-based AV system instead of a traditional rack-based system with all of its cost and complexity. And I have to ask, how sustainable is that? Can AV integrators survive on just USB peripherals and USB extension? And even now that the world has proven we're able to work from home and we're able to work from our laptops even more, we may not even need to go in the office as much as we thought we did. I'm not saying that's going to go away, but I don't know. I'll ask back to the group. Do we think the AV industry is actually really prone or primed to be healthy right now? When in the past, our project sizes were a lot larger, you know, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 conference rooms with a healthy profit margin to make. And now that we're working with USB peripherals and we're mainly focused on USB extension, can we survive and thrive? And other industries like the IT industry that have learned how to live with low margin, make a lot of money on professional services, remote monitoring, disaster recovery, data backup, remote support, all that. And the AV industry doesn't have a lot of that built in just yet. We might offer an extended service contract, but are we remotely monitoring those AV systems that have been deployed? Is the end user even going to ask us to do that, considering that it's their own local computers in the rooms? So I actually don't think we were really prepared, and I don't see that we're moving very fast to get more prepared. I've heard of a lot of USB peripheral sales, but I'm actually concerned we need a lot of tough love right now just to realize we're going to have to change and evolve if we want to thrive in this new world we live in.
Can we just have a quick discussion around that topic? Because I love, Michael's great because he's provocative, right? I mean, I'm going to just, mention something that I know, the Crestron folks are working on, and we are, and David, I know, is doing this. The whole concept of the AV-IT integration, I think that's another thing that had started before this and may just accelerate. But I actually would disagree. I think it's an incredibly ripe opportunity for AV integrators. I mean, our business is booming, right? I mean, there's schools that are outfitting 180 classrooms, 200 classrooms with tracking cameras, precisely because they need technology right now to overcome the fact that we're not together. But some people have to be on campus, those who have labs or those who want to meet, have some in-person interaction. I know there's a lot of professors who will tell you that remote teaching is not like in-person teaching. So the closer we can get to that experience using the AV technology that everybody's now familiar with because they've used it on their laptops, it doesn't mean they want to sit and look at, laptop streams the whole time if they have an option to be with their friends. But some of the stuff like the Crestron network video and, all of OneBeyond's, equipment as well is all IT network video and audio based, the Dante audio stuff. And then
yeah,
I know guys can talk about.
Yeah, so Ronnie, I can also add to that. So Crestron, first of all, Crestron has been deploying cloud solutions since 2017, actually well before that for residential solutions. But we really went into service-based monitor deployment, remote management in 2017. And I think the industry has been guided on that path to get there, but really in 2017, 2018, everything was still in their normal trends. Now with COVID, the need for remote monitoring and management of all devices, whether that's your UC PC or your remote peripherals or any device that touches the ecosystem of the AV system, needs to be in the cloud. And I think that while that trend was actually set up well before COVID, it wasn't actually picking up because customers weren't really adopting it. You're 100% right, Michael. The need wasn't there then, but the manufacturers were setting itself up to do that. And I feel like from a perspective of touchless or remote monitoring and cloud services, while the industry has not adopted them yet, manufacturers in the industry, like all of us on the call, have been setting ourselves up, and Crestron has been looking to lead the way in that area as well.
Yeah,
so,
and customers right now, to be fair, are starting to use that. So, Northeastern is an example that is using the Crestron panel, but they're not touching the panel. To control, OneBeyond systems and other things that are in the room, they're actually using it from a browser on their, they can control it literally from their phone if they need to, right? And also monitor the health of a system. Like, all of our devices now sit on the network. They're just network devices. So you can know whether they're running, whether they're recording, whether they've, what version they're running. And what I've seen talking to consultants and integrators out there, they've started, at least the last couple of years, and of course forcing it now, to integrate more IT knowledge within themselves, but also with any of the teams that they bring into their group, as well as we've had the change at Sennheiser. Not just microphones, we have to make sure we have the IT knowledge, and a lot of the consultants and integrators that I've spoken to. I've accelerated that now even further because of what's been happening the last few months, knowing that the writing on the wall, like Michael says, is changing. It's going to continue to change. I think that it will come back. It will come back a little bit, right? Because we still have to have some of that
in face-to-face learning, music schools, art schools, and other types of things. But obviously a big portion of the business is going to change to more IT cloud-based infrastructure from business to classroom.
So with things are obviously going very soft conferencing. Anybody with a laptop, you don't need to have the big fancy boardroom to do video conferencing. Obviously, that was long going on. But now, so right now there's a bit of a tolerance as everybody is working from home for a good enough technology solution. But the whole thing about Pro AV is the pro part. So how long do you think is the tolerance for good enough eroding? And is that the biggest opportunity perhaps for Pro AV to come in?
Well, let me give you an example to build on what Michael's talking about, because, there's this whole concept of USB camera or maybe, video over network or something. Let's take for the good enough thing. So let's say you want to include a meeting room in this gallery view, right? In the past, you might have just had a single camera, wide shot of the entire room. And if all you're seeing is one person in the meeting with one person in a meeting, a wide shot of the entire room might be okay, right? But now if you've got 20 people working remote joining the one meeting room, that one meeting room is now on the Brady Bunch along with everybody else. You've got to see who's talking in that room. And that's where, for example, automated cameras that switch based on who's talking and focus in on the person can give you, I don't know if I want to call it mediocre, it's a fun experience to see everybody on the screen at once. I mean, I think it's what's kept us all together through the last 4 months. But you need to see people. That's part of the connection, right? And if you can't, so that's one of the, I would say, changing needs in a conference space, is that it's not okay to just have a single wide angle camera or a camera you have to control with a touch panel because you're not allowed to touch anything anymore. More automated solutions that can focus in, kind of build on what people are now used to.
Yeah,
but going into the future.
But that answers your last statement about there's still opportunity for AV integrators. Well, what is it? The opportunity for AV integrators is that good enough isn't good enough. We can't produce a bad quality audiovisual experience for the remote participants because we live in a world where whether it's YouTube or Amazon Prime or Netflix, there's so much good content being created. I mean, there are social media influencers have 10+ million followers. And, the largest AV integrators don't have that many followers, or the largest AV manufacturers don't have that many followers. And you're telling me this person in their home office or in their basement can produce a better video quality production than we as an industry can create, in universities or in business training or whatever. So I actually don't think good enough is going to be good enough. And I think that that's maybe one of the best opportunities we have right now if end users realize the importance of creating a better looking experience, a better sounding experience, then yeah, I think that there's an opportunity for our
I think they're gonna want to push it as far as they can, right? We're in this mode. We're going to be in this mode for a while. So let's see what we can do. Let's make it as best as we can. Get as much options as we can. The customer is going to want that. I think we've seen that. What else can I do? I want more cameras. I want that to be better. And I think that's really pushing all of us as well, because they're not just, I'm on a meeting once in a while, so it didn't matter as much if the video was glitchy, it didn't sound as good. But now they're on there for 8 hours. They're teaching. It's got to be good, and that's where that is going to be possible for AV to still do their thing, but it's going to be that collaboration of IT and AV moving forward for sure.
And I think the need for collaboration, if anything, COVID has taught us, is greater than ever. You speak to anyone whenever you want now on a phone or call, but that need for in-person interaction, like everyone on this call right now, looking at each other, looking at the facial reactions, that's how you get the gist of the room. If you're just talking on a phone call for 2 months, you really don't know the way the discussion's going.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. We're going to push the leaps and bounds. I think how it's done is going to change definitely technology and how technology is implemented. And Michael, I think you're right. That's really the opportunity for the AV industry. But from the perspective of the convergence of AV and IT, I think that's happened. That happened well before this from a manufacturer perspective, well before COVID hit. But what we're seeing now is the industry is it's putting to the test. And how often is it going to be used? How can we deploy easily and efficiently and simply and drive forward when this hybrid collaboration returns.
Well, and I'm going to touch on then the last subject you also brought up, Matt, is that, okay, so now we need remote support for two reasons. One, you have to manage all that technology. And really complicated AV systems are difficult to manage, which is why a lot of AV integrators haven't been able to build a really profitable AV as a service model. Because when you have too many ghosts in the machine, I don't know why your video is not working. My network diagnostics says that all the devices are online. I guess I have to roll a truck. And those rolling the truck experiences are expensive. So simplifying the AV systems down to multifunctional appliances that are easy to manage and support helps that side of the conversation. But let's talk about this production side then. Can we expect the average trainer or faculty member to walk into a classroom, and maybe they're expert in physics or biomedical or whatever, and to create an incredible production, video production? Well, no. And they can't afford to have production crews in every one of these rooms. So we also have to look at simplifying the system and the user experience for the sake of production. Somehow you can't have a really complicated rack system, AV, all these endpoints and all these joystick controllers and all this, and then expect the teacher to drive it. So somehow we're gonna have to find a way to simplify not only management of these remote spaces, but even the production, and allow people to be able to create something that looks good, sounds good, is worthy to consume, without overtaxing both the presenter or even the institution that can't afford, full-on production resources, right? So yeah, we're in a tough spot. Opportunity for sure, but trouble for many.
And so to touch upon some of that, some of that already is in the industry. Like for instance, at Crestron, we have the capabilities of auto routing and auto changing whether the PC is on or whether a presenter comes into play. Ronnie's technology has the ability to auto track based on not only the audio that's coming in from the microphones, but also from the other capabilities. So I feel like a lot of that simplicity has been built in. The next level of that, though, Michael, you're 100% right, is integrating with other service models that ITs are used to. And that's really, we are trying to do that as well by pushing the bounds of basically saying if an HDMI input is no longer on in an automated test, alert the ServiceNow ticket so the IT system can now come up. And those services are actually coming into play and being offered by manufacturers, Crestron as one of them, in our industry so that we can move this forward. But from the adoption perspective, it's just in its early infancy.
I don't know. And I don't know if we're going to see massive widespread adoption. If you look at telephony, like voice over IP, what enabled service providers to start shipping off handsets for $100 a piece and then building a service model around that was the fact that the technology got so inexpensive and you could pre-provision and drop ship this stuff to a customer site. And it was that change from the traditional interconnect that was building really complicated, expensive phone systems to these inexpensive endpoints with some software backing it that enabled that whole industry to blossom with service provision and basically being able to offer. But tell me what AV systems, I mean, this is where we focus on. Our devices are these all-in-one appliances. You can pre-provision the darn thing, drop ship it to a customer, and have them plug it into power and data and a couple of USB peripherals and go live. But that traditional, rack-based approach was complicated, and the custom installation that we've thrived on for many years, it doesn't fit that model very easily. It's not easy to you can't pre-provision a rack and just drop ship it. It doesn't lend itself to that service provider model yet, but we're making progress. It's just, we're in this transition where integrators have to embrace more of these all-in-one or simplified solutions to do it.
So that dropship model is what we have implemented at Crestron. So you literally provision the device before it ships, it gets sent to the customer, they plug it in, and now it receives all of its settings from the cloud and you're off and running. And we've tried to simplify that. And I think that model that you just mentioned perfectly is what drove the telephony industry, is also what's going to drive the Pro AV industry, not for the simplest of use cases, but then even the more complex use cases, because I think one point that we spoke about before we got on this call is about how much manufacturers are now working together. And we're no longer in the bounds of one company works by themselves, this company works by themselves. Everyone's now working to use standards. We're implementing APIs so we can cross-talk to each other. We're all implementing on the same unified communications platforms with partnerships with Zoom and Teams. And that really, I think, is the collaboration of the industry itself could help the Pro AV industry as well, and is helping the Pro AV industry in many circumstances. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the biggest things is going to be to just offer choice, right? I mean, how many people, if given the choice right now, would go to a bar? Okay, they'd love to, but they can't. Okay, well, how many people? Let's not. So that's still off bounds. But how many people, if you're at university sitting in your dorm room, and they tell you that 12 people a day can go into this classroom that used to accommodate 100, now 12 people can be there, and they have to rotate. Okay, now some people would be perfectly happy staying in their dorm rooms watching video online and never getting out of the house. But I'm going to tell you, I have a feeling there are other people who are actually going to jump at the opportunity to be in a room with a few people just to see people. So I just really feel like, you know, things are not going as fast as we had all hoped. But hopefully at some point there will be a transition. Life in the future is never going to be like it was in the past. There's going to be more hybrid. There's going to be more flex. But that doesn't mean we're not gonna do what we used to do before. At some level, I think we will. So everybody, that's the kind of thing people should need to be thinking about and also this is an investment in the future, right? Schools like Northwestern or Northeastern, you know, we're always talking about extending the classroom, right? And giving these superstars teachers a larger audience. Well, they've now, you know, been almost forced to experiment with this, and we're all going to learn and evolve the technology in the process. I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of us and for the customers of the technology, because it's only going to get better faster as a result, because there's investment.
Touch on Alex's collaboration point too. I think that's what's really pushed this forward as well, is a collaboration between the manufacturers. Because there's, you know, if we're going to move forward, we're going to all have to talk to each other. And Alex, you know, we talk to Crestron all the time. We talk to everybody all the time, and we make sure that you guys can talk to our system, so you know when our microphone array is pointing to a specific point in the room, we can send you that data so that your cameras can go to that person. All right, so we have to make sure we're all talking together to move forward with these type of projects and make it as easy as possible for the person as they walk in the room. Because all they want to do is come in with their laptop and have the best production possible. They don't want to think about it. Just come in, put the laptop down. Maybe I wave my hand over a Bluetooth interface or a infrared interface, get things started for my signature, and everything just kicks off. And that's what they want. But in order for that to happen, it's going to have to be our collaboration as well. 100%.
I mean, I went into a room where they told me that the Crestron could tell if the room's divided or undivided. You know, like did the wall, you know, get pulled? And it's like, if it does, then our solution has to work just within the confines of this room. Right. If it's open, and it can all happen automatically. Nobody has to touch a button. They just have to open the door. I don't know. At some point, that's going to be voice activated, right?
And those air wall dividers. I mean, like Northwestern University has a really fantastic implementation at the Feinstein School of Medicine, and it's air walls. And those air wall dividers, it's Crestron controlled. It controls everything. It changes the ceiling mic system. It changes our sign-up technology. It does it, and it's great. And I don't agree. I disagree. Or I don't disagree that we've made incredible leaps and bounds by working together. I think we've been able to create some incredible experiences. The question in my mind, and I'd love to get your input on this, team, is, but at what point can we not make it good enough? And I'm going to just touch on, like, for example, the digital cinema industry. Okay, they are trying to make it worth your while to not just stream the content to your iPad. They're trying to get you to come to that movie theater. And they've done everything from reclining chairs to digital surround to 3D to they'll bring you beer. They've got little micro pubs and taps. And they're doing everything they can to try and make that experience so worthwhile that you'll get up from your lounge chair at your house and you'll go to a place to experience that audio visual. And that's, in my mind, is, you know, Ronnie, you brought up the point that the reason people are going to come is just because they're missing other people. And I think that there's some definitely validity to that. But at what point is it just we can deliver an even more personal experience through your personal device technology than we can create if you come in person? So, for example, right now, I see every one of you nice and clear. You're 20 inches from the camera. I can hear you nice and clearly. I can see everything really well. I'm in the comfort of my own home. Now put me in an auditorium and deliver for me that same personal level experience where I can see the whites of your eyes from 100 feet back. And I can hear you really clearly. And when you digitally present something, I just take a screenshot of it instead of having to transcribe it on my notes. It gets to be a point that says, at what point is the user experience more convenient and even better for them to just consume it personally instead of making massive investments in physical buildings to try and recreate. We may not even be able to catch up. And so it begs the question for me is like, well, then if you're gonna do something really amazing, like projection mapping or something that just knocks my socks off when I walk into a physical space, then yeah, I totally think there's a play for that, like in the zoo or theme parks or large corporate auditoriums or lobby spaces that are really amazing. But for the day-to-day stuff, I'm wondering if the in-person AV experience, how long before it loses out to the digital experience we can provide people if they just engage each other virtually? And I'm wondering.
So we're all going to become hermits. That's really depressing. Sorry. The world you are projecting. I mean, gosh, I love my Zoom. Okay, but frankly, I mean, I have a lot of teachers who are professor friends, and they will tell you all the reasons why, as good as the technology is, they want to be there. Their students need that informal interaction after class that just happens serendipitously. It can't happen through a structured environment like this. So I think let's not paint it as an either or. I guess I'm just trying to say, I really believe that this is gonna go in, there is a role for automation, IT-based video, more cameras in more rooms, because now you have to make them open to join people from remote. I mean, I was told in a school, I started kind of singing your tune. Hey, why don't you do breakout groups? Because they were talking about every student brings a laptop into class and just stares at their laptop. I'm like, if you're in class, you don't want to be staring at your laptop, nor does the teacher doesn't want you either. But there are people remote who need to join. And they said, well, what about team, breakout sessions? Everybody has to have their own laptop for breakout sessions. And I'm like, well, why can't you have breakout sessions in person for the people that are in person and offline or bring them in? You need to have, I basically just feel like you need to have options.
Yeah, I'm actually going to that point, there was a survey, I just looked it up, from Global Workplace Analytics that basically said 73% of the people that responded to this survey were very happy working from home. There was not a single, so 73% is a very high percentage. They're very successful. Only 19% in North America want to say goodbye to the office forever out of that 73%. So I think that it shows the hybrid is definitely there, right? I could be very successful right where I am right now. Everyone on the team at Crestron that I work with has been very successful remotely. But the need for collaboration is still like inherent in everyone's mind. I mean, when InfoComm passed this year, I wasn't even doing it. It was actually instinctively. I wasn't doing it consciously. I was emailing all of my friends in the industry who I usually see on that week. And I didn't even realize I did it until the next day. I was like, wow, why did I send so many emails last night? And it's just the need to talk to people and have that collaboration. Now, there's no question about it. We could do it through the video conference, and I think we're being very successful on this call right here. But a lot of people are also having the same feeling that hybrid work environment, whether that's 1 week on, 1 week off, or just getting to talk to someone in person is definitely necessary to be successful.
Yeah, I think what we've done is we force people to see what they can do. And they're realizing, managers are realizing, oh, I can manage a remote team. This is going to work. Oh, they're still being productive. So you're going to see some of that. To Michael's point, yes, we're going to see some departments that are going to work remote. It works. I don't have to commute. It's still going to work. But it's still human nature to come together. And I know, man, I can't wait till Sennheiser guys can travel, because I got guys that need to be on the road. We need to be in front of the customer, shaking a hand and looking at the place and talking and building that relationship. And there's nothing like, looking somebody right in the eye, not through the video and maybe a little bit of delay to see what's going on. But one other point too is, I think, and when you talk about the experience being better remotely, I think this is going to really push the technology, what we're going to be able to do in the classroom and in the meeting space, and enhance that to make it really cool as well. So I think we'll see a little more innovation and cooler classrooms being there because of what we're doing now. Even if it's just a cool experience because you're able to interface with people outside your classroom, across the campus so much easier now because we're going to have more cameras, and we're going to have the cloud set up so that the communication is faster. We're going to have 5G, coming around the corner here, et cetera, which we didn't even. That's a whole nother discussion. But what impact that's going to be for our industry. So yeah, I think it's going to stay hybrid. We're going to see some industries that are going to move to totally remote, but we will see them come back because we are human after all.
I'm glad that discussion here has shifted in a way. I wanted to go into a positive, happy, down the road. COVID is in the rearview mirror, obviously. So yeah, things are going to be hybrid. People are going to still be able to work from home. There's still going to be a lot of remote education. How do you think this will influence the way offices and schools design their spaces? Like currently, before COVID, the trend was a lot of open workplaces with hot desking for heads down work and a lot of huddle spaces. Do you think huddle spaces will become more of the thing because people will only come to the office when they need to do teamwork? What are your thoughts on that?
The start, I think maybe seeing more in different corporations creating liquid team spaces in their corporate areas. So where liquid teams can come in and work for a month or two together and then move out and the next liquid team comes in, as opposed to everybody with a little offices and cubicles. You'll create, okay, we got a project coming up, let's create a liquid team, and they'll come and do it. Yes, you could still do that remote, but you can certainly get a lot done when everybody's in this liquid team. I know I'd like to hear you guys' opinion as well, but maybe more of these setups of combination of virtual and space that can really change a lot through the course of the year depending on the project and the workforce that you need within your corporation.
Yeah, so I see at least for the next year, it definitely is the size of the room. So to say a huddle space is the traditional huddle space, I don't think that's the case because you need to still socially distance, you need to be separated. So a huddle space now could be a larger conference room, but you're spaced out in the room, and the need to have that remote participation because that not everyone on the team will be able to join there, and the local participation is extremely important. So I think that number one, that type of collaboration more in the open space and considering the larger conference rooms as huddle spaces is one trend that we could definitely see. The second trend, and I think that this has been coming in technology, is people counting, occupancy sensing, all of the other peripherals. So Michael, you mentioned like USB extenders. No question about it. The industry is definitely booming with USB extenders to transport the camera, the audio, when it's not on the network. But the other accessories that we can add to an ecosystem in the Pro AV environment to really bring everything together, like those people counting and occupancy sensors and other auto routing features that we build into automatic products, that I think is going to also drive the ability to make those larger spaces appear more like huddle spaces.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, personally, we have to, each one of us maybe has a different experience, and whether you have kids or not or whatever, how you're going to live in going into the future. But I, for myself, because it's kind of comfortable working from home, if I have work to do on my own, I'm frankly more productive at home. But there's going to be at least 1 or 2 days I want to go in and meet with people. So when I go in, I'm not going to want to go into my office and close the door. I can do that at home. I want to go in because I want to go to a meeting space and meet with people, but I got to be a little distant from them. So I'm going to be in a bigger room. And so that, that does impact those bigger rooms that might not have had the AV gear to cover that entire space with audio and cameras, needs to have that now. And the multi-use spaces is already something we were seeing a lot of. Right. It was this open space. It's like some days we're going to use it, for a classroom style. Sometimes it's going to be U-shaped. Sometimes it's going to be this. Your camera system, your audio system has to work in those. And that's what presets are for. And the presets can be automatically called so that whatever configuration your room is in, it's going to work, whether it's divided, separate, combined. That's where the AV gear matters. And people want that. Let me just tell you, I know, not every single room, okay, but there's a lot of rich companies out there with rich CEOs who really want a good experience, okay? And they're now used to an experience where they can see everybody up close and personal. They're not going to get it that, my other office in France, I can't see anybody there because they're so small. So, that's the kind of stuff we need to think about, is how to give them the experience they're going to want in the spaces they're going to now want it in?
I think we're going to have to look at it. I mean, I don't disagree, but I think we're going to have to look at it from a business perspective, right? The square footage in that physical building has become a third as valuable as it used to be. I can put 1/3 the amount of people. So what that means is an in-person AV experience is going to cost a premium. It costs a lot to clean and sanitize that room and to build out a room that can accommodate all the people that are going to need to be in it and connect it to AV. And so suddenly in-person meetings for the sake of business and using all that technology we're installing are somewhat of a luxury item. And now we have to start looking at it differently because it costs me money. Every time you come in that room and I got to sterilize it and I got to clean it up, it costs me extra money. I have to start looking at it just like universities are doing and saying, why do I have to be together in that room? I mean, that's a lot of universities are pushing students to online unless there's a physical lab that they have to, or they have to be in person for this. There's no other way to do it.
Have you talked to the students about what they think of that?
It's 25% can't wait to turn off their camera and go back to class. 25% never want to go back to class. And the 50% in the middle, don't mind online as long as it's got some in person. And I think that's really what we're describing. I think the whole world feels that way. I don't disagree. We can move more of our business and our judicial system and more of our education online, and we can do more online, but not 100%. Like we like you said, we don't want to become hermits. So
well, there's other spaces we haven't talked about. For example, you just mentioned.
The problem is too, when people think about, especially teaching, when you talk about teaching and everybody's, yeah, we just do it remotely. The problem is that when you're on a class with a teacher, you're on with a class with that teacher for that hour. When that hour is over, you're done. Right? But where the really cool conversations happen between student and teacher are just before the class starts and right after the class or in the hallway or something like that. And that's a big part of the teaching, part of learning and so forth. So yeah, remote works, but that's what a lot of the kids, maybe they don't even realize it, but some do, as I've talked to them, is that's the part they don't want to miss, is where they can walk and see their teacher in the hallway and get that 10 minutes and like, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And that's what you miss if you're on there for that hour and you disappear, because it's very difficult. Okay, let's have an impromptu call, at 10 o'clock. You can't do that. It's those impromptu conversations that are really important when teaching.
And to the point of sterilization, I also think that that's kind of what drives innovation on our side. So like antimicrobial cables have been existing in healthcare industry for years now. We never looked at them in the Pro AV industry. Now is a chance that manufacturers could jump on that bandwagon and say, hey, if we offer two options, how can we make this easier for the installers to be safe when they deploy it? And how can the end users use it safely too, even for touch panels? There are antimicrobial glass options. So I think that from this, the problems are everywhere to solve, right? And your point about looking at it from the business perspective is 100% right. The business needs that we had to solve for 5 years ago are completely different than the business needs we're solving for today. And they're going to be completely different 5 years from now. It's just how fast technology moves. The Pro AV industry is not as fast as the consumer industry, but the Pro AV is typically in line with the consumer industry. So I do see a lot of potential innovation growth for Pro AV.
Ironic, I just thought of another example. Some friends of mine just moved from the suburbs into the city into a very small, because that's what you used to do. You used to go to from your big house into your small house when your kids, flew the coop or whatever. They now really want to move back to that big house in the suburbs because they're spending so much time together and they need a little more space. It's the same thing. We were all starting to do these smaller and smaller and smaller meeting spaces in our offices. Maybe everybody's going to say, when I'm there, I want a little more space. So I think there's a change. I'm not going to invest in commercial real estate right now. I'll tell you that.
Why not? That's a really good point, because that would be one of the most concerning things, because the AV integrator needs you to buy some space so I can build AV. If you're saying I'm not going to invest.
No. There's a lot of space out there that just needs to get redone and will be more valuable if you have AV gear in it. Because remote people can join the people who are there and they need space to meet in. It's just going to be different space. Those are the people that are going to have the opportunities, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Alex. It's an opportunity. Any crisis is always an opportunity for those people who can think differently, as they say.
Yes, David, you mentioned before, go ahead. Yeah, you mentioned before multi-purpose spaces, and I think that multi-purpose spaces used to be like a niche in the building. where the huddle spaces were the maximum percentage of your floor space. Your larger conference rooms or executive conference rooms were a very small percentage, but they did have a large budget because they were the highest seen rooms. And then you had this multi-purpose space, which kind of was used for many different things. That's the largest space though, because that's where you put the dividing walls up and really could change that. So Ronnie, to your point, if we have that floor space and we can accommodate for social distancing when everything can come back into this hybrid environment, you could see a conversion of some of those huddle spaces into that multi-purpose space.
I wonder what we're going to do with the little ones that can't accommodate people. I mean, are they just going to sit unused then? Are we going to give up on them for the foreseeable future? You have lots of little conference rooms that we're not going to upgrade because we just can only put one person in it or two people in it.
So one customer that I did speak to talked about converting some of them to hot spaces, hot desks, because you still have the door to close them off. You could fit one person in the room, and kind of to Ronnie's point, you don't want to be, I can do that in my house right now, that's fine. But I mean, if you're in the office, you have a meeting, but you do want to socially distance yourself during the time you're there, there's a lot of those spaces there. So,
okay, guys, we're having a great talk, and I know we could keep on going, but we have to wrap things up. So to wrap things and tie a bow on this, I just wanted to get your short, maybe like one or two sentences on this. Something you brought up just in your last point, Ronnie, about turning a challenge into an opportunity. So when we look back on COVID-19 and how it influenced the industry down the road, what will you say? COVID-19 was good, turned out to be good for the pro AV industry because?
I'll be the positive. I'm going to say it forces us to start asking a question we should have been asking all along if we haven't been, which is, what is the business value of this investment? How does this affect the bottom line? How does this improve workflow and efficiencies and increase profit while driving down costs? And if we start thinking about the technologies we're implementing as it affects the bottom line of an organization, then it's not only easy to justify the expenditure for what we're doing, but it guides the decision-making process along the way. Not just because, it looks good or we like it, but it makes sense for the organization. And I think more so now than ever, as companies are going to be kind of pulling back, the economy's a little bit weakened, I think they're going to have to justify their expenses more. And that just forces us to think proactively on our customers' behalf of how can this technology help you achieve your goals in a cost-effective way and make you more efficient, that kind of a thing. So I think it's a great growth opportunity for the entire industry.
Well, I can say for one thing that, first of all, it educated the whole world about, well, besides about Zoom, but about video conferencing in general. I mean, my dental hygienist said she learned Zoom. Okay, so that's not something she needed to do for her job before. So we've now got an educated population, and to David's point, we are all having to ramp up really quickly on something that everybody thought was going to happen eventually anyway, is some level of remote hybrid work, learning, whatever. We're learning the benefits and the pitfalls, and we have an opportunity to develop new solutions at an accelerated pace because the demand is there.
I'll say, what's a good thing about COVID? Well, not a lot, but I think what we have seen is and Ronnie, you were just talking about it, is our customers are realizing the capability of what we can all do. And I think and how far they can really push this technology, and we are moving quickly to make sure we can push that technology as fast as we can. So I think one of the huge big things about this is how fast things have worked, how fast things have come together between manufacturers, and how fast we're actually seeing people starting to adopt to it now. We're like, yep, this is going to work. This is the way it's going to go. And that can only mean good business for all of us, because people do see they have to do it and it's going to work. And I think we're all proving that to them. And in the long run, it's going to help them on those rooms, and it's going to bring other technology in the future as well. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and I'll echo those points. It's really post-COVID or from COVID, I see opportunity and the need for collaboration. How we're doing it has changed. Everyone's being more successful in that respect. But the opportunities from the growth of the industry are exponential, because you can really attach to so many different types of things that we were not attaching to 2 years ago. So there's a really good optimistic outlook, and I also see the opportunity for the hybrid environments. That ability to know that you could be successful where we are remote, and also wrap accessories around and products around and services around really those IT-centric, those IT-style devices. But now really that's not, they're all the same thing. It's going to drive us and the total AV industry forward.
Great. Well, that's about all the time we have. So I just wanted to say thanks again to our sponsors on this panel, One Beyond, Crestron, Sennheiser, and WolfVision, and to all our other sponsors for the event, including Shure, which provided us with these Aonic 50 wireless noise canceling headphones.
Some of us provided some of us. I haven't gotten mine yet. I'd love one though.
Oh. And yeah, with that, let's open things up to some questions from the audience.